don't think this is replacing a human. This is just helping me reflect better as a human so I can be better with other people, be better at my workplace, be better with my family. Just fascinating. I did not expect it, and it's mind-blowing.
This is Right About Now with Ryan Alford, a Radcast Network production. We are the #1 business show on the planet with over 1 million downloads a month. Taking the BS out of business for over 6 years and over 400 episodes. You ready to start snapping necks and cashing checks? Well, it starts right about now.
What's up, guys? Welcome to Right About Now. Hey, well, we say we're always getting right, and it's always talking about what's now. And look, guys, if you're listening and you don't know, there's a little buzzword out there. I hear it on every corner. I see it on every social post. 2 little letters called A and I. I can't get away from them. They're everywhere. But look, they make my life easier. They're making the world a better place in a lot of ways. And look, I'm pumped to have 2 guests today who are at the forefront. The CEO of Pandatron, Dima Syrotkin, and Robert Newland, the chief money officer is what I'm going to call him, Robert. He's Chief Dinero Honcho. What's up, guys?
I'll be in.
It's great to have you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, we're all over. We're all over the planet today. I know, Robert, you're down in Florida, and Dima, I think you're across the pond, right? Where's home today?
Yep. I'm in Helsinki, yes. We have a pretty big office here, so visiting our people here.
Yes, very good, very good. I mean, you know, I joked in my monologue about the AI thing, and we're going to talk all about Pandatron, AI coaching, driving organizational performance, but it is the buzzword of the day. I mean, it is everywhere. Like, how do you guys balance that, like, the differentiation of what you feel like you're doing, and, like, you know, what's the overall sentiment of the industry these days?
Robert, do you want to take it? You just
Sure, happy to.
A bunch of conferences.
So, you know, we talk to a lot of people out there, and I can tell you, at least from a corporate standpoint, there isn't a single company, large or mid-sized, that is not investing crazy amounts of money in how to leverage AI in many different ways that we can get into later. So this is not an if or when. This is a happening now, probably for a number of years, but everybody's in the bandwagon right now. Not everybody knows what to do with it, but everybody's spending crazy amounts of money trying to figure it out.
Well, doesn't it come down to, like, they know, you know, they have to, because at some point the efficiencies, your competition can't have, like, what, a 60% operational efficiency over you, right? Is that what it sort of comes down to? That and the promise of the money savings combined with you know, right sizing organizational structure. I mean, there's a lot of different things, but it seems like, Robert, you know, being the money guy at the end of the day, it seems like it's somewhere grounded in that, I think, for a lot of organizations. Like, they don't want to get left behind. Is that what it is?
Yeah, but there's also a once in a generation opportunity. Probably, you know, even Bill Gates said this is bigger than the PC, for example, because it's not just a big shift in the way in which we do business, but it's also the speed of change. Even the PC took about 20 years to reach mass adoption. ChatGPT took 10 months. So again, when you combine the two of them, it just makes it compelling for everybody to get on the bandwagon as soon as possible.
Yeah. Dima, what's your perspective here? You know, of what you're saying. You guys go to all the conferences, right?
Yeah, I think, like, people think a bit too much about AI being only an automation tool, and I think it's so much more. And maybe we'll tap that with, you know, what we do as well. But we see, you know, even though we say AI coaching, it's so much more than just coaching. Like, suddenly it becomes, you know, a completely different tool that we've never had before that can also guide, you know, your whole strategy. Because suddenly, besides just coaching people, you can also collect data about what are the biggest topics that they are, you know, talking about, and what's behind those topics, what's the root causes, and then you can combine all that, aggregate that, and look at the patterns. And it's something you could never do with human coaching. So I think people oftentimes think too much of it as like this, well, I have this process, I'm going to automate it, and that's going to be the saving. And I think that's going to be the first step. I think that makes sense. But I think it's going to go kind of beyond that. And we're not fully even comprehending that, like what all those things could be.
Yeah. And I think it's, when I think about, I simplify things for clients, and for a long time, it's sort of like, I sort of was dividing it into, okay, it's going to do more for us, but it's kind of doing and thinking, at a process level. And I think a little bit of what you just described, Dima, like the way it can process that information and withhold it. Because, if we walk into a meeting and have a discussion, unless someone took really good notes, at best it has somewhat of value. But when that information is being processed and managed, like you said, by someone that can sort of create trends, think through that data, process it at faster speeds, and curate it in different ways, we get into a really fascinating place with just the overall advancement as these things come together.
I think we talk a lot about like AI, but like a way we could never do before, I think is also remarkable. So that's also something like for us, right? Previously, companies maybe had HR surveys where they would ask people, how do you feel, scale from 0 to 10. And then they were like, okay, it moved from 0.4 to, or whatever, 7 to 7.6. And you're like, what does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything. And then suddenly you can make it very concrete by actually going into specifically what people said and what was the meaning behind it, and aggregate all these concepts, find kind of commonalities, and almost like talk to thousands of people at the same time.
So let's back up for the audience. I got so excited because AI is like all around me, like I'm going down these roads. Dima, how the hell did you get so smart? Like, that's what I want to know. Did a AI program your brain or something? You're a young guy, you're getting after it. Let's set the table, as a CEO of Pandatron, talking with
question.
Dima, like what created this path to intelligence and entrepreneurism?
Hey, I just thought I met him, all right?
Robert, we'll talk mucho dinero in a minute. No, yeah.
So like jokes aside, actually, there is like a genesis story for the company, which is connected to like my genesis story as well, where like I was part of a nonprofit called ISAC. Accidentally, actually, Robert was also part of it. Some 30 years prior. But
let's not get into that. Yeah. He said he hired me because he had gray hair.
Oh man, Robert, not cool, man. He's throwing your age.
He's got gray hair. We can hire him.
I know. I got some in the beard here. I know, Robert. You and I are probably closer than Dima. Yeah. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, and a big part of that was actually getting exposed to coaching for the first time. Really, like being like, okay, what do I actually want in life? Like, where am I going? What's important? What are my fears? What are my dreams? And I think before that, I've never really like asked myself those questions. And that's fundamentally what coaching is about. It's about asking this like very deep questions, supporting someone through that process, helping them set goals, follow up on them. And that really so to your question, I wasn't really pursuing AI. I was pursuing the problem of how do we provide this powerful technology of psychotechnology of coaching to more people. Because it felt like, okay, if you think of any problem in the world, if you think of, the Ukrainian war, like sometimes I think, well, if Putin would have had therapy in childhood, like would have that been prevented, And sometimes people are like, well, Dima, but what about like an asteroid, right? Like you can't control that. Was like, that's not related to psychology. And then we have this movie, Don't Look Up. And there was an asteroid and they fucked it up. They were like, let's mine the asteroid. Let's like blow it up. And then they didn't because they were like fighting for the last like. So like to me, all change, everything is related to how we behave and how we react, how we think, how emotionally aware we are. And so I was pursuing that problem, and we were in this space even before AI became a thing. And we had like human coaches, and then like a founder was our head coach, Lauri, was like, we should do chatbots. And I'm like, chatbots don't work, dude. Like it's never gonna work. And so we had like human coaches who were doing it via chat. So they would just like log in and they would do it like you would text with a friend on WhatsApp, but was a coach.
It's fascinating playing with the tool. And watching Amy and listening to her, interact with it. It's really crazy how far it's come. Like, the intelligence, the humanity that you can sort of feel within these tools is, especially with Pandatron. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, because part of me is like, can you replace that human touch and all that? But then you start interacting with the tool and the way with.
Ryan, I'm joking that it's more empathetic than I am.
Yeah.
Which is probably true.
He's not joking, by the
Dima,
way.
I'm just barely getting to know you, but I think it might be. You know?
But
mean that lovingly.
Right, there is a quote from one of our users in Australia, which is Dima knows is my favorite, and she says, I know this is going to sound kind of weird because although I know I'm talking to an AI chatbot, somehow I'm more comfortable talking to my AI coach than a human because I do not feel judged. So what we're learning from this, at least in AI within the realm of coaching, is that in coaching, what people are looking for is, they're looking for availability and empathy, right? And then reflection. And we can provide a high level of consistent empathy to AI coaching. 24/7 availability, and then deep reflection in meaningful ways. And it really, it's one of the areas, and I want to quote Dima here, that from an ethics standpoint, AI coaching is one of the areas in AI that is not really replacing humans. I think we help humans reflect better on themselves so that they can interact better with one another. And I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I mean, it is because, and I think you started with like, the biggest point I think, and I think about, people think about the judgment of others a lot. And if you could remove that barrier,
yeah,
I think you unlock some potential authenticity and realness that never gets unlocked human to human.
That is exactly what we're seeing. And listen, I've been in talent management. Okay, I'll say it as long as Dima's been alive. And, yeah. But in all these years, I have not seen something experiential that allows for this level of vulnerability for a human. I never thought it would be possible. Even when I first started seeing these comments, I thought, no, it's got to be an outlier. Then you see consistently getting this feedback of the experience. And again, I don't think this is replacing a human. This is just helping me reflect better as a human so I can be better with other people, be better at my workplace, be better with my family. Just fascinating. I did not expect it, but it's mind blowing, frankly.
Talk about the nuts and bolts, of Pandatron. Like I'm an organization, and this is for either you, Robert, or you, Dima. Like, what is my problem, and what is this solution? Like, just as plainly as your natural voice, of what it is. Sometimes you read products, slicks and sheets and speeds and feeds and all these things. But I love what you said, Dima, because starting with the problem like you did versus a lot of people are kind of going, okay, this is AI. Pretend this hat is AI. I'm trying to fit the AI into finding a problem versus starting with the problem and AI being part of the solution, which is what I heard from you. But talk to me about that exact, deliverment to a potential company.
I think there's two big buckets of problems that companies try to address. One is just scaling coaching and support for employees. They already have these programs, but typically it's just an executive level. And they're saying, hey, how can I give this to 1,000 people? And the goals there are pretty broad, right? It can be employee engagement. It can be leadership development. That's one bucket. The second bucket is when a company comes to us and they say, look, we want to change. We want to be more innovative. We want to install, say, to us and say, we want our people to experiment with AI. We want them to actually launch new products. We want them to play with it. We want them, to resolve whatever fears they have and kind of go around it and test them. Are they actually true? So in the span of like 6 months, we helped them to launch 3 AI products with AI coaching tool. And it was a public company. The stock went up 24%. They were quite happy as a result. Of course, as with all AI, we'll see, where the results actually, end up delivering. But I think it was.
Hey, I just want to say, Chief Revenue Officer, not happy that we didn't make an equity deal on that one.
I'm about to say Robert would be happy. Robert would take that 24% increase in stock.
Yeah, we should have done that. But hey, it's hindsight 2020, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and with those kind of changes, right? Whether it is AI change or just like we want to be more innovative, agile transformation is another buzzword that gets thrown around, where we basically multidisciplinary teams that the silos. Always like when you have like 100,000 people, let's say you're the CEO of Siemens, it's really freaking difficult to like change the direction of the Titanic. It's like even if you're the CEO, you're the most powerful person in the company, doesn't really mean much. Like all you can do is like send people email, like do training, and then and behavior is so entrenched that it's super difficult to change it. And this is the tool that suddenly allows you to go and sort of like talk to everyone, kind of spread your gospel, nudge them in that way, but also do it in a way where you kind of interact with them and you also get their opinion. And you then kind of deliver back, what are the challenges? What's stopping us from transforming better, right? What are the systemic challenges?
Yeah. Is it, I mean, in a way, when I don't know if I saw these exact words. I'm sure they were somewhere. I'm sure you guys will enlighten me if they were. But like HR, in a way, like human resources, a subsegment of it. I know you're not replacing, but it certainly felt like a gigantic HR resource.
Well, let me bucket these things in a certain way and then kind of frame us. When you look at organizations, you see a lot of HR assistants, right? How can I use this information through AI and be quicker at it? Then you have what Dima presented, which is how do I optimize processes through AI? What we're doing, which is in the talent management sort of realm, if you will, is sort of dealing with, with the Simon Sinek's of why. It's not what you do, but why you do it. At the end of the day, every individual does something for a reason. And if you want an individual to contribute to an organization, if you want an individual to sort of shift direction with the organization because they're going to a new market, new product, new industry, whatever the case may be, it's personal for them, although it's strategic for the organization. And the AI coach allows you to reflect on the why and what are your inner drivers, intrinsic motivations to sort of come along for the ride. So I think a lot of the mistakes that we see in organizations is that we train them on direction. We tell them where they need to go, but we're not really investing time in helping them think through why should we come along for the ride? And it's all nearly impossible to do that until you get to scalable AI-based coaching. Because otherwise you can do this, mass training, mass messaging, mass communication. The ability to move the needle at scale by engaging with people in the thousands on a one-on-one basis to sort of discuss the why is really a game changer for organizations and humans. And I got to tell you, Ryan, I'm just happy to be alive right now in this moment with AI because it's really a big, big thing happening for the planet.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's clear. And I think the note on how fast GPT, the 10 months, the scale is, a proof point of that. So you guys are all the AI conferences these days. I mean, it feels like a little bit of the wild, wild west, but not because people aren't intentional, but what is it like with all the AI buzz? From a broader perspective in the industry and, sharing what you guys are doing and the investor talks and all that stuff. What's the lay of the land?
I think in many ways, on both the client investor sides, for many people, the question right now is, what happens when this scales, right? I think there's currently an AI experimentation budget, and it's not yet clear where does the AI budget go after that, right? So we experiment. Once we start scaling all this, where does this go? Does this go under the existing budget? Do we cut some of the existing stuff and kind of replace a piece of that? How do the processes work? Do we need to hire less people? Do we need to hire more people because of this? So I think we're very early on where it's still in many ways experimentation, and many companies are trying to understand what's actually going to happen next? Like, how is this going to impact it? And I think another thing that I always say is that, like, even though we say that it's AI and this is just two letters, there's so many different applications. Like a ChatGPT and a self-driving taxi that I use frequently in San Francisco are like so freakishly different. Like there's almost like nothing in common, but both are like AI, and so in that regard, like we need to be kind of very careful with, when testing these things, treating them all differently as well, because they are different.
Yes. Dima, I like that analogy because you know what I like to say? I think podcasting is too broad. You've got two guys in a closet doing a hobby, and then you got the number one show in the world in business, and Rogan making 300 million over here. I don't like broad categorization. Like AI. There's a lot of different things with which sort of the principles, I guess, of artificial intelligence are being deployed in a million different ways, right? I think that's what you're saying.
Exactly. And also that we're still comprehending, right, like what the impacts are going to be, right? Like, for example, with what we do, right? Even though we call it AI coaching, I almost feel like this can be a tool to almost like lead the organization in a completely new way. Because suddenly, in comparison to like human coaches, you can actually align an AI with your organizational objectives. So it can kind of nudge people in that direction. You can collect all this data about like what are the systemic issues that can, again, help you adjust your strategy. And at the same time, you can kind of support people. So it almost becomes, less of an employee benefit tool and more of a leadership as a service, if you will, right? All that leadership that wasn't done, maybe because of lack of skill, maybe because of lack of time, whatever the case may be. And so I think in many cases, since we're still figuring out like what happens once we scale this thing, another example is like all the processes, right? Like, customer service. I think there was a Swedish fintech company that published that they saved like, millions on kind of automating, I think 90% of their customer service, and saying actually like a lot of it is not that difficult and it's pretty repetitive. Yes, we need that like little bit of a conversational touch there, and we now can have it with generative AI.
Dima, Robert, what's your perspective, on, like what you guys are doing, the conversational kind of chatbot experience versus the AI where like it could be one of the three of us regenerated and talking these things, the humanity that might be artificial versus the words on the screen. Have you guys, what's your perspective there?
Dima, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways we're still, sometime away from that. And I think it's an interesting question of like, will we get there fully, or will it still be a gimmick? And I think that with the current level of technology, you can do a lot already, right? Like I think with the current level of like GPT-4 level technology, you can do AI coaching, for example, right? In the same like format as we do it. You can most certainly do voice. Can you do sort of an avatar that sort of does as well? Maybe, sure. But can you get it from this level of like, I don't know, what is it at right now? Like a bachelor student to, something that's actually like even more intelligent. Yeah. And that's not totally clear because currently, I mean, a bunch of models are kind of converging on a similar level of performance. And so I think that's really like, that's going to be very interesting in the next year to see, what are this, Microsoft and similar companies that are building these huge data centers, like what's GDP5 going to be like? But the thing is, like, I think even if we stop like here in terms of, and we reach like a certain plateau before the next breakthrough occurs, that's already like having a huge impact. And I think like that's way more likely than like this, what's called like artificial general intelligence, where it like really simulates a human in like every way. So far, we don't really have any clue on how to do it. And the, maybe the metaphor, I don't know if it's as clear, but it's like people sometimes are like, well, won't we like just upload our mind, right? And just like exist forever. Like in theory, that's a good idea, but we have no clue how to do it. like how are you gonna like encode consciousness into something digital? And this is like a similar level problem where it's like, yes, this like a chatbot that predicts the next token and sort of responds more or less kind of plausibly. That seems, we've done it. We can see how that's done, but like doing something that actually goes beyond that, hard to say.
Yeah.
We've already consumed all the internet data and put it in there. That's what it came up with.
So am I simplifying it, Dima, like in you describing that? Like, obviously they already have like talking avatars now, right? Like we could duplicate ourselves or pick, Tom, Harry, or Sally that we like. That's the, regenerated avatar. So knowing that those exist, am I oversimplifying that you couldn't just feed the answers that you're giving to that avatar to then give it back to them as a human form talking to them?
Yeah, I think the question is just like the quality of the responses and the quality of like facial expressions. I think like it will probably get there over time. The question is like, what are we talking? Like, and in terms of like GPT-4, I mean, anyone who used ChatGPT, I think you're both like amazed at its quality, but you also like notice its limitations.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's easier to go like 95% there, but going like 100% there, I think that's like super challenging. And that's where like a lot of our engineering work, right? Like it's not just ChatGPT, like you need to do a lot of work with both like experts, like, right? So we employ like coaches, social psychologists, therapists, to kind of look at that and see, change management consultants, what do we need to tweak? What didn't work? How do we approach it better? To also technological solutions, right? Like, okay, how do we kind of simplify the flow so that we kind of simulate this magic? And it's not visible that like in reality, there's like, there are cracks and you can find them if you like try really hard. When are we going to get to the, I think like, we're really at crossroads right now. So it's very interesting, like what the next year is going to show. Either it's, straight into singularity or we're just settled with this, beautiful society that automates, 80% of routine work, which is also pretty good.
Yes. I talked about this on my news show. You kind of said something that sparked a Dima. You hire therapists and you hire all these other inputs, right? Because to get an output, you have to have input. We can agree with that, right? So my problem has been with ChatGPT and all these other things. The great thing about Google search is, okay, that Google makes a lot of money, but you get SEO value and you get people ultimately to your website where I will do a transaction for the content that I've created, right? If you do it right. ChatGPT and a lot of these tools are taking information from people that spent money, time, or their thought to create, and we ain't paying for the ingredients. Excuse my ain't. And so we have to, if I want to make chocolate chip cookies, I got to go by the store. I got to buy flour and I got to buy chocolate chips and sugar and milk. So are we paying for the ingredients? With all these tools, it sounds like you guys are, but, Google ultimately pays for the ingredients because they pay back the publishers via raises in, getting people ultimately to their sites. But once you deliver the answer without the source, when I was in history class, I had to cite my sources. So is it creating new knowledge or is it taking existing knowledge that should have been paid for and turning it into something?
I think that, even if you Google stuff now, you see that there's a little Gen AI summary up on top.
Oh, yeah.
So some people are even saying, it's not even taking me to my site anymore because Google is summarizing it. And is that fair or unfair? Right. So there are so many layers to these that are unforeseen right now. We really don't know, what the future holds, quite frankly. But there is something to be said about, segregating between going to a chat GPT for a solution or feedback versus when you're using something framework like, say, Pandatron, right?
Right.
You're getting specific guidelines tailored, say, to coaching that is asking you to reflect on something, which is sort of like an interactive, dynamic experience that helps you think versus just feeding you information. So it's a bit different than, say, go to Google, give me an answer. And here is, well, how did that make you feel? Is there a better way to do it? What did you learn from it? What would you do next? It's a whole different kind of experience. And I always tell people that when you look at these things, not only is, like Dima said, a self-driving taxi different from ChatGPT, but also ChatGPT is different from, say, AI coaching than an AI assistant. There's just so many different ways. But I am curious as to what's going to happen with Google when you sort of go from, because we used to say, why don't you Google it? And now people are beginning to say, why don't you ChatGPT it? So curious to see what's going to happen, say, 3 years from now when it comes to that dynamic. I don't know.
Yeah.
And to add from our perspective, I mean, what we decided to do is that, we are conscious of the fact that we still want to use frameworks from some of the top leaders in the world, top thought leaders in the world. And we're like, hey, let's just partner with them. And so we're currently in discussions with, the top 50 kind of thought leaders and, including, anything from leadership happiness, change management, anything that's related to what we do, and saying, hey, we would like to mention your work in our AI coach. And it will help you to sell your books. It will help you to get into those executive rooms because the employees will start talking about, your frameworks a bit more. And so in general, it's a win. I think one interesting question, of course, though, is, it will make the people who are at the top, in a sense, prosper even more because suddenly you can kind of scale that to everyone. It's kind of like, if you could like scale the best teacher in the world, why would you go for like, 100's best if you can get like the best? So I think that's a dilemma. And that's like, and that's the same kind of everywhere, kind of like, how do we actually then get junior people to progress in their career before they're that like top expert? Because we are sort of then replicating the top expertise. But at least like in terms of like compensating people for their work, I think that's super important.
As we close out here, guys, I know we're backing up against the timeline, and maybe we'll have a part 2. I think there could be a double episode here for sure. Are we looking for investors? Are we looking for more clients? Or yes, please? Like, what is that sort of roadmap for you guys? Are we who are we looking for?
Yeah, investors, Dima, clients, Robert.
Yeah, I would say clients first. And those are mostly, big companies, typically, but we're also now starting to roll it out to like lower middle market and starting to experiment there as well. I would say another thing what I mentioned, right? The top thought leaders. So all the Simon Sinek's and Amy Edmondson's of the world, we would love to chat and partner and collaborate because we think that this is, it's going to be very impactful. And we want to kind of co-create this collectively. And then lastly, yes, investors. But the first 2 things are primary.
I think, Ryan, on the customer side, what I found that has been quite surprising is that there's an agnosticism from industry and geography, meaning that we have large enterprises in pharma, in consumer packaged goods. Some of the major global consultancies are coming to us and saying, hey, we want to partner with you guys to present you as a sort of bundled offering to our customers, because what you have it's pretty unique as well. The other thing that I've found that's interesting is that when you look at adoption of AI, say ChatGPT, the speed of growth of say, there's a great study from Davos from Oliver Wyman, the World Economic Forum, and it showed 5-month growth in adoption of ChatGPT by regions. And for example, you saw what I call us the don't fat and happy countries, the developed countries doing financially well, that the rate of growth was slower than the developing countries. So this to me is very interesting, the impact it can have in the global economy in terms of who's catching up over what. So I'm curious to see what happens a year or 2 from now in terms of adoption and advancement and what that entails and what it implies in terms of global competitiveness, right? We're also seeing, something I like to say, if your organization thinking that you're too soon to use AI, the percentage of employees using AI in just about every industry is crazy. So even if you're not using AI, your employees are.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. You just have to catch up with your employees.
Yes. And I know we may be having a little bit of technical difficulty with Dima, and I know he has other commitment. Robert, where can everybody learn more about what everything you're doing, learn more about how to get in touch, all of the sort of calls to action for everyone listening?
Thank you so much for the plug. Two places, certainly Pandatron AI. And since we're going to be on the podcast, it's going to go to a large amount of people. If you do try.pandatron.ai, you may even take it for a ride and let us know how you feel and how you like it.
Hey guys, I recommend you do that. The little bit I've played with it and our team has played with it has been highly impressed. These guys know what they're doing, and we will get them on for a part 2 because a lot of questions I still have, and I want to task Robert for the money and Dima for the coding. I want to get all the zeros and ones out of him. It's got a lot more than that, I think. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I really appreciate it, and I do mean that on a part 2. We'll have to do that in a couple months.
Thanks for having us.
Hey guys, you know to find us, RyanIsRight.com. You'll find the highlight clips from today, the full episode, and links to Pandatron. Look, if you aren't trying AI, you're going to get left behind, and these guys know it, and they're out there helping the world be a better place. We'll see you next time on Right About Now.
This has been Right About Now with Ryan Alford, a Radcast Network production. Visit RyanIsRight.com for full audio and video versions of the show or to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. Thanks for listening.